The love between two gay men faces ostracism from a frightfully homophobic society. Jesus Christ is born, crucified and resurrected. The tabloid paparazzi forcefully disrupt the privacy of others, and Derek Jarman spends his time gardening at his Prospect cottage, reflecting on past memories, past lovers, and dreaming of the film which we're watching. This is Derek Jarman's The Garden, a semi-autobiographical reflection which shifts between dreams and reality, aiming sharp criticism towards the persecution of the queer community in Britain under Margaret Thatcher's Section 28, legislation that prohibited the promotion of homosexuality, often motivating the rise in homophobic hate crime, workplace discrimination, and serving as a limitation of the rights of the LGBTQ+ community. With its focus on a modernist gay couple and the hatred they face throughout the film, Jarman also contrasts this visual narrative with the persecution of Jesus Christ, a figure of love faced with immense hostility, both connected by an irony due to how religion can be weaponized by people to harass the queer community. Amongst the ethereal surrealism, The Garden remains semi-autobiographical due to Jarman's own personal touches. His Prospect cottage, where he spent his later years after his AIDS diagnosis, Jarman's own activism reflected in the film's concerns towards the abuse faced by the LGBTQ+ community, an abuse which continues to persevere today, and Jarman's own heartfelt adoration towards the friends and lovers he lost due to AIDS and HIV. Due to this mixture of the personal and the surreal, The Garden frames many of Derek Jarman's woes into a multi-layered visual poem, full of rich metaphor and satiric bite. For the British Film Institute's Blu-ray release of The Garden, William Fowler summarises The Garden beautifully, stating that, close to a nuclear power station, inside his modest, sparsely furnished home on the barren, windswept Dungeness coastline, Derek Jarman dreams. Shifting from the personal to the political, it culminates in a near-mythic exploration of sexual repression at the end of the 20th century, movingly utilising a cast of iconic religious figures. Increasingly ill by this point, Jarman faces his mortality with poetry and dignity. A significant element of Derek Jarman's The Garden is its portrayal and contrasting visual abstract narratives regarding the persecution and chastisement of people either in love or spreading messages of love. Here, love is met with hate. For the gay couple often central to many scenes in The Garden, they experience intimidation, dehumanization, and physical assault at the hands of manic prejudice, an attempt at eradicating a love beyond heteronormativity. A similarly violent chastisement to King Herod's call for the massacre of the innocents in his attempt to eradicate the birth of Jesus Christ, a call for violence and brutality to counter the existence of a loving force beyond the line of thinking for a prejudiced mindset. Through The Garden's juxtaposition of these two visual narratives, Derek Jarman considers the continuation of prejudice and its determination to dismantle and destroy anything it fails to understand. Within this film, it's the failure to understand love beyond heteronormativity. This leads into The Garden's monumental criticism towards Section 28 and its often negative impact on the LGBTQ+ community as a whole, a homophobic legislative clause which affected the community as it motivated a rise in hate crime and public prejudice. The gay couple at the centre of The Garden experience their love disrupted by hateful figures who bombard them with harassment, intrusive chastisement, and physical violence. Brutal attempts to break the love the two men share together. This persecution of queer people is also demonstrated in a dystopic sequence involving a drag queen, possibly even a portrayal of a trans woman. The film never declares if she is one or the other, but both drag queens and trans women serve as applicable in this depiction. She is chased and harassed by the paparazzi and the abuse of women chasing her down, attacking her. Not only are the public depicted as turning on queer people, but the paparazzi are not far behind the attacks, snapping photos and participating in the horror, a tabloid enabling an encouragement of hatred, which was very much the case at the time of The Garden's production, as many tabloids published horrendously homophobic hit pieces against the LGBTQ+ community, a notion which is unfortunately still relevant today. Despite the repeal of Section 28 in 2003, anti-LGBTQ sentiment continues to remain in the current tabloid climate, specifically nurturing and enabling the hatred towards trans people, which encourages a rise in hate crime. These horrors are contrasted with scenes of Derek Jarman's admiration for the persevering strength of the queer community. Proudly gleaming aspects of his activist perspective are present in the garden. The flamboyant joy of a lip-sync embracing the metaphoric pink, the queer community, performed with footage of pride marches and protests as the backdrop, is an infectious display of LGBTQ+ solidarity and pride, both a demonstration of camp and the reinforcement that pride is, and should always remain, a protest. Even more bleak notions within the garden are drenched in queer solidarity. The gay couple are to carry a cross to their crucifixion. Their cross to bear is a hateful world unaccepting of their tender, loving existence. When the gender-diverse individual, who was targeted by violent prejudice earlier in the film, kneels at the couple's feet, kissing them, a sign of respect, an illustration of her love for these two men who have suffered the same prejudice she has, a symbol of solidarity, community, a notion that in this unforgiving world they still have their sense of dignity. Jarman's juxtaposition of crucifixion with a loving gay couple, the crucifixion, a metaphoric extension of the persecution faced under Section 28's conservative cruelty, intentionally connects his narrative of gay love with that of the love of Jesus Christ. This is a world that was not ready for them both, but it also couldn't break them either. Amongst these elegiac concerns of the oppressive nature of Section 28 and Tory rulership, especially at the time of the HIV and AIDS crisis, The Garden still remains a partially autobiographical piece of experimental cinema, reflecting Jarman's numerous identities and activism. Tony Rayns discussed this in detail for the film's press book in the 90s, stating that Jarman is squarely at the centre of the film, just as much as he is in his 2 volumes of autobiography. He is first seen dozing at his desk, surrounded by his favourite objects, clearly dreaming the film into being. On the face of it, this is the same Jarman presented in the books. Jarman the artist loner, Jarman the promiscuous homosexual, Jarman the pugnacious and opinionated critic, Jarman the victim of AIDS-related complex. All of these Jarmans are undeniably present in the film, but so too is a new one, Jarman the gardener. The man who wrote the books and made the earlier films was an adventurer and world traveller, a man hungry for experiences of all kinds. Jarman the gardener is a stay-at-home, content to let the world come to him. When it comes, through newspapers and television or radio, much of it disturbs and angers him. Jarman's identities as an artist, a gay man, a man living with an AIDS-related illness are present in the garden, his appreciation of art, theology, paganism, homoeroticism, but his gardening becomes a newfound source of reserved comfort in an unforgiving society. Scenes of Derek Jarman potting plants and existing peacefully at Prospect Cottage are beautiful to witness, but Tony Rayns is right to acknowledge how the world comes to Jarman through prejudice in newspapers, television and radio, Jarman's response being fury. Derek Jarman offers brief narration in the garden, and as the film reaches its conclusion, there is a sense of both anger and sadness, motivated by a tender love remaining for the men he lost in his life, his friends, his lovers, and members of the LGBTQ+ community, dead at the hands of bigotry, hate crimes, the HIV and AIDS crisis, which a homophobic society was unwilling to empathise with. Jarman's narration about how his friends died silent deaths, how he'll die soon, wishing them a good night boys, certainly holds an autobiographical, personal weight that seems to hint towards the messages of his final film Blue. In this quiet testament to lost love, as an image of floating ash ends the film, Derek Jarman seems to suggest just how easily things come and go. In conclusion, Derek Jarman's The Garden is an amalgamation of tragic phantasmagoria and deeply personal autobiography, a film which reflects Jarman's societal woes in his dying years. Derek Jarman's final words in The Garden sting with a heartbreaking resonance, forcing us to recognise that beautiful souls were taken too soon by hatred and a health crisis which seemed to only exacerbate prejudice rather than encourage empathy. Jarman's heart aches in this place, which is intended as a source of reclusive comfort. The garden a landscape of beauty, surrounded by an unforgiving industrial scene, like a world not made for such natural love. And in this pain the viewer is confronted with the sobering truth that, as much as we may try to find solace either in community or self-care, like a stubborn weed, the cruelty of the world rears its ugly head once again. A special thank you to my incredible tier Patreon supporter Gil, and my super tier Patreon supporters Constantine Bombelli, Jamie and Milkway.
all.